special presentation from a senior advisor within the Institute, from Yves Warrior.
Okay. Hello, good afternoon, good morning. First, do you hear me well? Do you see me well?
We see you, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. Now I will start sharing my screen. Okay, do you see my screen?
Yes, sir, we see your screen.
Okay, thank you very much. So my name is Yves Morier. I'm retired from the European Aviation Safety Agency and the French Civil Aviation Authorities, and I've a bit underlined the word retired because I will not be, of course, speaking on their behalf, but all I'm saying is on my own name, I would say. So, I plan to do is a bit of an overview of the US and innovative air mobility regulation in Europe, and also to continue with certain consideration that I would like to put about regulation, certification, and also the need to attract and retain people. As you may be aware, and EU has developed a system, has developed a certain set of definitions, which are presented here on that screen. So the broader box is innovative aerial services, and that covers aerial operation, that is to say UAS or drones, and innovative air mobility, which probably in many other places is called advanced air mobility. Innovative air mobility, in turn, has boxes in there: urban air mobility, regional air mobility, and international. So I thought it might be helpful to just start by those set of definition to set the scene. Also, something I wanted to a little bit discuss briefly was how the general framework for aviation safety is organized in the EU. So for that, we have what is called the basic regulation, which is what fundamental regulation which creates the framework for aviation safety in Europe. It defined the roles of the European Commission, the EASA, and the member states. It's important to realize that in Europe, we don't have, for example, an FAA, but we have, I would say, actors like the Commission who adopt the rule, EASA, who develop the rule and do basically everything having to do with design and foreign organization, and the member state who, in a way, approve all the entities or provide the authorizations or provide the licenses of people and entities which are under the jurisdiction. This basic regulation covers all aviation domain except low-risk activity like microlight, for example, which remains national, or some little airports. Approval granted in accordance to this regulation and all those that are adopted based on that regulations are valid in the whole EU, and all other regulations that I will describe are actually implementing that regulation. An important point perhaps to mention, because we talk about drones, we talk about eVTOLs, the Artificial Intelligence Act adopted by the EU in 2024 is also modifying this basic regulation to more or less say when you modify it or develop regulations, you will need to take into account this Artificial Intelligence Act. Concerning UAS, it addresses all civil UAS and in particular define essential requirements for UAS. These are high-level requirements that are in fact put again a sort of framework for all that will come after. There are flexibility provisions for member states, but they are on security, on privacy, but they are not on safety. Concerning AIM, there was no special requirement to piloted AIM. So if I start by looking at the US regulation, the guiding principle for those regulations are as described here. First, they were operation-centric. We use the fact that there was nobody on board and US to make that approach and say, okay, the regulation are addressing operation as a whole. They are risk-based, so we try to be proportionate, and performance-based in order to try and address the speed of development of the US industry. Now, when I say performance-based, we cannot just say something that US must be safe. It still have to respect legal certainty, equal treatment, to clearly understand what are rights and obligations. So, but the idea was try to be performance-based as much as possible. In order to facilitate public acceptance, such regulation needs to cover not only safety, but also security, environment, and privacy. So what do we have? We have created a regulation for technical requirement for US, also for third country operators. That means operators from other countries than Europe. They were put together with a technical requirement for US to save having to create another regulation. But the technical requirement for US is that what create the US classes for the open category, which are using a regulation framework, which is in fact what is called the product harmonization regulation used for, you could say, consumer goods. So the idea was to try and use that, and that has led to the creation of classes for the open category and also for the standard scenario that are in the specific category. US operation create the three categories: open, specific, and certified. So open, there are limitations, like below 25 kilos, but there is no need for a declaration, no need for an authorization. You start flying, if you respect, of course, the conditions. Specific are more ambitious operations, for which the general principle is to obtain an authorization which is based on a methodology called SORA, and the certified category would be the higher risk, and there an approach comparable to the classical manned approach would be followed. This is certified, is still work in progress when open and specific are well developed. These technical and operational regulations have been complemented in 2024 by how to be able to certify a drone, so how to modify the Part 21, and also how to create, I would say, the continuing airworthiness requirements for certified US operated in the specific category. So now coming to the U-Space regulation. So U-Space is also what is also called unmanned air traffic management. This regulation deals how to create a U-Space airspace, what are the necessary steps, what are the risk assessment to be done, and the coordination with the local authorities. It identified 4 mandatory services, which are remote identification service, geo-awareness service, flight authorization service, and flight information service. There are 2 optional services, weather service, and another one which would check how it says the operator comply with the requirement of the U-Space, which is called the compliance services. Service provider which provides service in the U-Space airspace are certified. This creation of U-Space has necessitated to modify certain regulation, like the general one about the provision of service for ATM ANS. It's about extending, I would say, the concept of dynamic airspace reconfiguration to the U-Space. Dynamic airspace reconfiguration is what is being used when a manned aircraft, the controlled airspace, need to go through the U-Space airspace. And Regulation 2021-666, which has modified the rules of the air to introduce e-conspicuity, which is an an equipment that should be put on board a manned aircraft when it is going through a U-space airspace in an uncontrolled airspace, so that it is visible to the service provider, who in turn can inform the operators. Another regulation affecting UAS is information security. In particular, the service providers for U-space, they need to develop a management system for their IT system to avoid being hacked. So that's our regulation as they stand. My personal take is that when it's comprehensive regulation, they're applicable in 31 countries. We have, in addition to the 27 EU, 4 other countries, Switzerland, Norway, Iceland, and Liechtenstein, that have agreed to follow the EU regulation. However, it must be said that these regulations are quite complex. It can have been a byproduct of trying to be comprehensive and cover many cases. And the experience has shown clearly a need for simplification to allow further development of the US activity. And EASA and the European Association of Stakeholders are working to prepare a notice of proposed rulemaking for the end of 2025 or beginning 2026. Time frame is not perhaps 100% precise. So they still need further work on the certified category. But what is probably the big priority is, of course, this simplification, and certified category may wait a little bit. Now, coming to the EU regulation for innovative air mobility, so what is called also advanced air mobility everywhere. For aircraft certification, Part 21 is fully applicable. There are 2 special conditions, which are also with means of compliance. So special conditions is a tool that we use when there is no published technical requirements, like we have for large aeroplanes, for example, what we call CS25. So in that case, rather, I would say, rather performance-based special condition has been produced for the small category VTOL up to 5,700 kilo, and which now in our regulation tends to call VTOL capable aircraft, or VCA. There is also a special condition for electric or hybrid propulsion systems, which is a complement to that one. When it comes to operation licensing and rule of the air, regulation 11.11.11, so 4 times 1, has been adopted in 2024, which creates a type rating for the VCAs in the flight crew licensing regulation, a part AIM in the operation regulation, so a specific part how to handle innovative air mobility, so what you classically find in operation regulation, like fuel reserves, etc. And also to modify the rules of the air to introduce new definitions like VCAs, and to also clarify how you deal with fuel and energy because of the use of electric propulsion. Finally, last but not least, I would say prototype design guidance has been published for vertiport. This is guidance only to be used by member states when they want to design a vertiport. So it covers, I would say, the size of the vertiport, the lighting of the vertiport, and I would say how you protect the vertiport from the obstacles. So it's quite classical, but it's limited to the design guidance. What is my take also on EU regulation for innovative air mobility? Well, we have there a comprehensive set of documents. I will not say regulations because of the vertiport aspect, also applicable in the 31 country. What would be important is, of course, to continue the effort which is in progress of harmonization with FAA, because there are differences, in particular in the technical requirements, which can have significant consequences, I must say, in particular when we talk about the level of safety. Today, the focus is on piloted VCA used in urban air mobility, which seems to be the most pressing activity. That's the one which is clearly ready to come first. And further work is necessary now, obviously, to extend to other part of AIM and to address autonomy, which is not fully addressed at the time being. This is also linked with artificial intelligence. We have also in EASA has created a hub for information sharing, for safety promotion and research. So I will not detail all this, but it's a hub that you can access publicly. There is a public part, and you have to register if you want to access to the more, I would say, detailed part. Now, some personal consideration, perhaps, to conclude this presentation. One is about aircraft certification. We have heard a lot about it. It's the elephant in the room. I have even read that it was the tunnel of death. So what I wanted to say is that, okay, it's necessary for higher risk operations. Not all aircraft are certified. We have a Part 21 light in Europe. The FAA mosaic rule has been introduced. In such case, there could be operational limitation. Yes, basically, aircraft certification is how we address, I would say, the safety of aircraft. We consider that for VTOL, which are operated over a city, this creates certainly high risk, which deserve a certification. Now, certainly it's resource intensive because you have to demonstrate, I would say, the technical requirements, not only tick boxes, but demonstrate. It's also time consuming because there will be back and forth with the authority. So obviously, this needs to be taken into account in your business model or when you prepare your activity, when you prepare to design an eVTOL, you need to take that into account. But certification is not only a nightmare. It has also big advantages, which are to increase the public confidence. Because when the public knows that an authority, a capable authority, has been looking at the design and looking into details of the design, at the technical aspect of the design, that increases public confidence. And it also improves the aircraft. Because in the authorities, we have technical experts. Those technical experts are, seeing various different projects. They can see things that work or do not work. Generally have quite a lot of experience, and they can actually help the designer to comply with the requirement, and in other words, to improve the aircraft. Some personal consideration continued. While aviation has been regulated since the beginning, the Wright brothers flew in 1903, and the first French regulations were dated 1911. Now, how to try to cope with the increased pace of new technologies? This is a bit something we need to look at. What can we do? Performance-based regulation, as I mentioned before. Increased reliance on standards, which is a complement of that performance-based regulation. The advantage of performance regulation being that you say what needs to be done and not how to do it. And then you can use standards which are developed by standardization organizations. You can also develop partnership contract with industry, so to try to discuss ahead of the certification, how could be a new concept, how could they be approached. You can do research. You can also put test centers in place and a regulatory sandbox. And obviously very important, you need to harmonize with other authorities and you need to cooperate with the industry, be open, be transparent with the stakeholders. If you do that, you perhaps have a reasonable chance to cope the development of technologies. And the last one I wanted to mention is about human capital. We speak a lot about regulation, certification, financing, insurance. These are identified issues. There is a need to augment the effort, I think, how to attract and retain people. It seems that aviation is less attractive than it was before. And certainly, it's important to get the right people. So it's clear to me and probably clear to everybody that a good team is a key element of the success of a company. So thank you for your attention. Thank you for the AIM Institute for having me today. Questions and comments are welcome. You have my email here, and the last slide is actually a set of useful links. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the presentation. It's very interesting to look at the regulatory framework. Next up is a 10-minute break. It is currently 17:18 GMT time. We will come back at 17:30 for a special presentation about innovation leadership from Alison Burrows.